CBS's 2019 series Evil is what happens when you take a lovingly and intelligently written TV series about the boundaries between religious belief and mental illness, and you slap in unnecessary wokeness on top. Now, I know most of the people are going to watch this video to see exactly what I have to say about wokeness, but I want to back up and I want to talk about how phenomenal this series is overall. It's a series about three main characters. David Acosta, played by Mike Colter, who you may remember as Luke Cage from the Marvel Netflix TV shows. He's really what got me interested in this series. He's a great actor. I love him in pretty much everything he's in, so I said, well, I'll give this a chance. He plays David Acosta, who used to be a photographer. He used to do a lot of drugs. He had a fiancée named Julia. He was a war photographer, got diarrhea in Pakistan, and now he is in his second year of seminary to become a priest. His job is an assessor. So anytime that someone says, oh, hey, my wife is totally possessed, she needs an exorcism, well, the church, before they say, we're coming over with the holy water, give us a minute, guy, they have to send out an assessor to see if, A, is there actually a problem or is the guy just a dick? If there is a problem, is it mundane mental illness, or maybe there's some environmental cause, lead in your pipes, toxic mold, doing a lot of drugs, that kind of stuff? Or is there something more that we can't explain, and it is actual demon possession? In addition to that, you have to confirm miracles. I would assume that should you be trying to beatify someone, in the Catholic Church, beatification means we officially recognize you as a saint with a big S, and you become Saint Bob of the bowling alley or whatever. You have to do that. And there is also prophecies. Are these prophecies real? Are they made up? Kristen Bouchard is a mother of 4 daughters who are very prominent in the series, but to be honest, don't worry about their names. It doesn't really matter. Kristen is a clinical psychologist. She's originally working for the DA. She will interview a criminal if you want to see if someone is criminally insane, if they're competent to stand trial. That's where she comes in. She is a lapsed Catholic, meaning at some point in her life, probably when she was growing up, she had to go to Catholic school. She's like, nah, not for me. She's married, but her husband, of course, like all husbands do, spends at least half of the year guiding groups up mountains in Nepal. Now, they say Everest, and they say he was hanging out in Tibet, but let me tell you guys, the Chinese do not allow that. So he's hanging out somewhere in Nepal. The last guy is Ben Shakir. He is played by Asif Mandiv, who you might remember as one of Jon Stewart's correspondents back before The Daily Show really began to suck hard. He plays a Muslim who is a non-practicing Muslim, although his father is very upset about that, and he has a sister who is upset about that. He is another resident skeptic. He got on the team because he used to fix things in the rectory. That's it. So he looks for natural causes, natural phenomena of why certain things would occur. The main antagonist for the series is a man named Leland Townsend, played by Michael Emerson, who you may remember from Lost, which is neither here or there. Hopefully this show is going to resolve some stuff. He is someone who may be a demon, or he may be a human psychopath who is encouraged or inspired by Satanistic iconography. So it starts off as kind of a procedural, like X-Files was Monster of the Week. This is sort of Miracle of the Week, Possession of the Week, and it slowly builds. As soon as this starts, Kristen is visited in her dream by a night shadow or an incubus named George, who gets into her panties and finds her cesarean scar. Seems to know a whole heck of a lot about them. It's played off in the beginning very much as it's all in her mind, maybe it's not in her mind, and you never really know until later on in the series when one of the girls starts to see the same thing. In the first episode, on David's side, he had a vision from God. And since then, David starts using magic mushrooms in order to communicate with God. So there's a large question of, okay, is David actually seeing God? Are the visions that he have truly prophecies? Or is the dude just high off his mind? And it's a very interesting thing. In many ancient cultures, people would take hallucinogenics. That's pretty much what shamans were doing. They would trip off their balls, they would have these visions, and then they would tell people about the visions and interpret them. We find out that there's a prophecy from 1550 that only people in the Vatican are supposed to know. They're starting to come true, and there's a prophet, a Chinese lady, is prophesying out of a daycare for whatever reason, and the Vatican is starting to investigate. Now we find out that there are symbols for 60 different demons, one of which Leland uses. To make this series all the more creepy, early in the season, the rules of demonic possession and how they start to work in your life. You start by doing something small. The demon will try to separate you from family members who keep you grounded. And eventually, you do something that invites them into your body. Well, let me tell you, this happened. Kristen's husband shows up eventually, and he's kind of sort of Buddhist. He starts chanting. The girls imitate him, and they start chanting, even though he didn't technically teach them. There's a lot of other things around the girls. They start playing this video game where they're encouraged to play with the Ouija board. Playing with the Ouija board is another way to invite spirits in. There are all sorts of very small actions which tilt someone towards the path of evil. And to me, this is the most interesting. This is a story about the Catholic Church. And while they do take a few digs about kitty fiddling and some of the other more recent church scandals, it has a very loving appreciation for the church and for what they seem to try to do. In this case, it's actually fighting demons, actually helping people out. In all the areas where we see potential character choices, many of the choices seem like very small choices, but they all sort of nudge them in a direction that is not, shall we say, in compliance with the way the church wants you to behave on things. And all these things end up driving them closer to demons, allowing demons further in their lives, allowing things to haunt them, allowing past mistakes to come back, allowing new mistakes to come back. I personally love religious shows, not all religious shows, but the exploration of religion and why people believe what they believe. So in essence, this show is perfect for me. The flaw is, it seems like this story is so well researched, so respectful to both skeptics / science and towards religious belief. And then, like, they got a note from somebody at the network, and some exec at CBS was like, you know what? I don't think the kids are going to like it. You have to add some woke stuff. Sometimes it actually works pretty well. There's an episode where they're looking for people who use these different sigils that they find in the ancient manuscript, and one of the people is actually David's dad, who is a painter, and this symbol appears on his paintings. David hasn't spoken to him in like 5 years, goes somewhere in upstate New York that mysteriously turns from fall to midsummer, whatever. They're there, and they're having a quote-unquote root ceremony. David's dad is now in a throuple. He has a wife and a lady who might be a lesbian or bi, I don't know, it's very unclear. But his wife is pregnant. Now, this is a wife David hasn't met. It's not his mother. They spiked the sangria on some kind of psychobilin, so everybody is tripping out. Kristen witnesses the 6-month pregnant wife of David's father give birth to some sort of deformed monster. David He meets the ghost of one of his ancestors. They have a root ceremony at this party. The root ceremony is where they call to the ancestors and they invite them to come out. And he sees this lady who's hot and barefoot and everything. And he mentions her name. And his dad's like, oh, that's one of our great ancestors. And he has a picture and a letter saying that she was bought at a slave auction. That kind of stuff works. Acknowledging past stuff, making it kind of personal is great. But then we have other problems. Other unbelievable problems. There's one episode where a young girl dies on a soccer field. 911 is called. People are trying to resuscitate her. They get her from the soccer field into the hospital. She dies in the ER. After 3 hours, they start to do an autopsy. The first cut is on her chin, and she wakes up. Everybody's freaked out. In the end, what they say is she had COPD. They say that the lungs couldn't absorb oxygen, but she died because of racism, because white people will have life-saving measures done for 53 minutes, but this girl, because she's black, only had it done for 23. So let's say it took 15 minutes for an ambulance to get to the field, 15 minutes to get to the hospital, right? So half an hour. These chest compressions and rescue breathing are done for, let's be generous, bump it up, give them 30 minutes. So that's 1 hour. She's still dead for 2 hours before the autopsy is done. You can't say if she wasn't breathing and had no pulse that she lived for 2 more hours. Here's how these kind of things work. You stop breathing first, your heart works for a couple minutes later, like 3, 4 maybe, and then that stops because there's no oxygen. You can't at any point during this thing say, oh, she stopped breathing so she's dead, but she still has a pulse. There's no way the lungs are absorbing oxygen at all. She is dead for 2 more friggin' hours. And they say, well, she came back because it was sloppy work because of racism. She was never really dead. What? That doesn't make any sense. For sure, she would have a heart monitor, EKG, flatline, not coming back. Chest, not moving, not coming back. Was sitting on a gurney for 2 hours after they stopped trying to rescue her. Now, I have not ever been a part of an autopsy, but I guarantee you they must do one last check, right? They get a young person's body. They must, for, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever, try to find a pulse. Ain't gonna happen. If they don't see the chest rising, she's dead. The only way she could have come back was a miracle. So it's events like this that occur throughout the whole thing that are just sloppy and lazy and are totally different from the rest of the series. There's another one where as a young guy, he gets turned down by a barista at pseudo Starbucks. Like, yeah, dude, we've all been there. The hot chicks who work there, they're not interested in you. They want tips. So at any rate, he goes to a psychologist who introduces him to a quote-unquote incel group on 8chan. Okay, so they got the 8chan verbiage right. But these incel groups are like, yeah, I'm a man and women owe me sex. America! Does anybody remember the other guys? Will Ferrell and Marky Mark? They're in a car. Marky Mark's like, punch it, we got to get to the crime scene. Will Ferrell does, and he yells, America! And it's funny. It's a joke. For some reason, people seem to think that incels exist like this. It's a cartoon version of reality, not what actually happens. We further have an incident of a lady who's from China who somehow speaks perfect English. So she's been here for a long time. They say her immigration status has lapsed and she's out of the country in, what seems to be like a week. Okay, look, even under Trump's quick deportations, not going to happen. She would be entitled to a trial. She would have gotten a trial. The Vatican wanted to keep her in the U.S. I guarantee you, through diplomatic channels, the Vatican would have been like, hey, we wanted this girl in the U.S., eh? And the U.S. would have been like, okay, sure, cool. You post a bond, you're responsible for her. And she would have at least had a temporary visa. Maybe they would have kept her in a prison. I doubt it. but she sure as hell would not have been sent back to China where they murder Christians. All right. But at any rate, season 1 is over. We're waiting for season 2. It will probably come out. My guess would be late January or early February. The season got delayed due to all the COVID whatnots and delaying the schedule. But it is coming back. They are filming now. Should be up for 2021 season on CBS. All right. If you want a good show that gets weird, I highly recommend Evil. Very thought-provoking, very intelligently written with some glaring holes TV series. Leave a comment down below. What do you think about Evil? Where do you think it's going? What's up with the goat guy? Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and I will definitely be back with the season 2 review.